I'm Tiffany Hill. I'm the Associate Editor of HONOLULU Magazine. And here with me today is Kathryn Matayoshi. She's the Superintendent of the State Department of Education, and Don Horner, he's the Chair of the Board of Education. And today we're going to be talking about what's going on system-wide when it comes to public education in the islands. And some of our questions that I'll be asking today come from our readers and some come from our staff. So this first question comes from David in Honolulu. What is the DOE doing to retain new, talented teachers? And on the flip side, what is it doing to remove poor performing ones?
So one of the things in the Race to the Top was a commitment to what we call induction and mentoring. For most people, you think about it as orientation and support in the first 2 years of teaching. And we've adopted a very high standard on the kind of support and training that new teachers need. We've been recognized by the New Teacher Center for those standards, and they are actually coming to Hawaii and doing a lot of training around what we need to do to help new teachers learn their craft, get used to their classrooms, and keep them in the profession. On the flip side of it, you know, the evaluation system that everyone keeps talking about seems to have everyone focused on removing teachers, and what we really want to do is see how we can support teachers to make them better teachers. Now, if a teacher is not in the right field, then I think as we provide them that support, they'll see it. We're going to have a number of criteria. There'll be regular evaluations. And I think that's one of the major steps towards saying, are you right for this profession? Because we really want good teachers for our students.
Is there a disconnect between the DOE and board administrations and what's going on at the classroom level? For example, how often do complex area superintendents visit the campuses that they oversee?
One of the efforts when we talked about reorganizing the department was really focusing on the complex area superintendents as the field generals and giving them the time to really focus on their schools and get out to schools more, because it is a time factor, it's a workload factor. So I think the board has been really clear that their role is to get out to their schools and lead those schools.
We have some outstanding complex area supervisors. We've had the privilege in the last 12 months to basically appoint 5 of the 15. So they're fairly new, but they are outstanding. All of them started in a classroom. That's where their love is. Most of them really don't want the job, frankly, Sue.
Yeah, I think so.
They're doing it out of passion for education. It's a tough job. And it used to be in that role, frankly, they had a lot of responsibility, a lot of accountability, but not necessarily all the authority to make decisions. A lot of their decisions got bluntly micromanaged for a variety of reasons. That's not happening today. They have the responsibility of accountability and the authority.
I'll speak for the board. From my observation, the board members have spent a lot of time out in the community. And Don may not be willing to say it about himself, but he has spent a lot of time working with the student council and with individual students, gone to their meetings, gone to their conferences, so really focusing on what's the student perspective. So I think there's really been a personal effort to get out and understand more about what's happening in schools.
This question is from Carrie in Honolulu. I chose to send my children to private school because of the negativity surrounding public schools. What is the department and board doing to reverse that negative public perception that many Hawaii parents have when it comes to public education here?
As Don mentioned, we are the only state in the nation that showed growth in both English language arts and math in the 4th and 8th grade under the NAEP test, which is then called the nation's report card. And we're the only state that showed that kind of improvement. Are we where we want to be? Not yet. But there are so many strong programs in schools, and it's really about getting the word out. I think Washington Middle did something for parents a few months ago that highlighted the programs at their school. They just beat Iolani and Punahou in the Math Bowl. You know, those are the kinds of things that some students have won a number and a range of national awards, and they get a little moment of you know, the spotlight. But we really need to emphasize that not only are those students excelling, but there are a whole range of students that are doing well.
And I might add, as I spoke to your editor in this magazine, this May issue, which first I just want to, as a consumer, I want to applaud your magazine over the years that have kept, frankly, a watchful eye on public education. I'm disappointed, though, at the benchmarks that we continue to use. If you look at the rating systems, it's really the standardized state test and what's called the SQSs, which is a survey of parents, teachers, and students. The problem, those SQSs are, in my judgment, flawed. When you only have 17% of the parents reporting, then clearly you don't get a good voice. But yet that's, at the moment, how we define success in some ways. We've got to do a better job. That's our responsibility, not the magazines, because that's the only quantifiable numbers we have. But it's the board's challenge, the superintendent's challenge, to better define success and then quantify it and then hold ourselves accountable to it. So part of the perception in the marketplace, Honolulu High School, for example, is an outstanding high school. I have no problem my children going to Honolulu High School, for example. We have some very, very outstanding schools in the public school system. And so the notion that that parent is concerned about spending upwards of $20,000 and pay taxes, they're absolutely right. We should be very competitive with the private schools. And in certain cases we are. In certain cases we should be. And we need to work towards that goal.
This question comes from Jen in Makiki. If every truly concerned person, both in the private and public sector, especially those at the executive level, sent their children to public school, the system overall would be much better off. There are cities that have public school systems that people are proud to be a part of. Did you send your children to public school? And if not, why? And Dawn, I know that your children attended Iolani School, so maybe you can start off by answering.
Well, first off, I don't make that decision. That's my wife made that decision. Let's be clear. I went to public school. My wife went to public school before she passed away. And would it not been for a public school teacher, I wouldn't be sitting in front of this camera because of their dedication. I was first in my family to go to college, and it's only because a public school teacher demanded it. I had no aspirations of college, so I very much believe in the public school system. But 20% of the population in the state approximately send their kids to private school. That is because of that, what you just described earlier, mostly a perception that you want the best for your child, and people sacrifice to make that commitment to do what's best for their child. And part of that is an assumption that the private school systems are better. In the case of where my one boy attended and one boy attends, frankly, the scores are outstanding. 50% of the national merits come from that one single high school in the entire state. So I'm not, my goal is to get all of our schools to that type of caliber.
I went to Hilo High School. My children both went to Iolani, as did, actually one's still there, as did my husband and his brother and my father-in-law. So one of the things I think to touch on is at this point, there is actually a legacy question for many families. For me, it wasn't real. I'm not going to blame him, but that was the only school that they applied to. And if they hadn't gotten in, they would have gone to public school. That was my parameters around that decision making, which was done, when they were little, when they were 5 years old.
During the time that I spent at Nanakuli for this most recent story, one of the biggest things that I noticed is the lack of communication. That's probably one of their biggest challenges at the school. So what kind of support and management training is given to principals and his or her administrators?
So all principals in the state go through a certification process, which is, and a review. I mean, they have to get through a series of trainings, including a final oral presentation and a sort of a question and answer that hones some of their communication skills. I do think that's an area that has been probably not fully supported. I also think the whole issue of change management is something that's new to the department. In other words, in many companies that have undergone and seen rapid change in their industry, you know that their leadership has had a fair amount of support and training in what's called change management. The department's embarking on that, and it's an area that is just something that we've really begun to focus on in the last year or 2 years, the new ways of communicating, and the multiple ways you have to communicate. So I think it's also true that Darren's relatively new in the school. The principal there has been there 2 or 3 years. There's been a lot happening. So bringing those messages together and bringing the staff together under a new leader has been part of his challenge as well.
And also, part of making a change, is having confidence. And some of that confidence stems from having, like as I said earlier, it's about authority. we're giving our principals the latitude to make decisions, to have the authority. That takes courage, and it takes time, and it takes trust. One thing in the department I've noticed is there needs to be more trust from the board, within the system, et cetera. We've got some very hardworking, noble people. And now we just need to have the confidence to make those changes and to know that they're going to be supported when those changes are made. There will be mistakes made, but we all have the same goals and mission. And I have a lot of confidence in the superintendent, as well as our leadership team. So now it's just a matter of rolling up our sleeves and doing the job and trusting each other to do the job.
And we know from doing our articles on public education that there are great successful schools within the system. So how is the department looking at these best practices of these schools to implement in those that are floundering?
Well, there are a number of examples. Until now, though, I really think that it's been pockets of excellence that have not been shared. And our emphasis on doing the K-12 construct that I talked about is really talking about from a high school level, an excellent school like Honolulu High School, really looking at the feeder schools and saying, how can we actually help you get better? And they, vice versa, going to the high school saying, hey, these are the things that we're doing. So more communication up and down that line. But also this formation and the organizational change that we've accomplished. We've moved all of the complex area superintendents under the deputy, and they've formed their academic leadership team. And with that academic leadership team with the complex area superintendents can actually begin to focus on sharing those best practices within that group. We've also tried to very consciously avoid what we call random acts of improvement. That is programs that come in and go out the next year, a new one comes in, a new one goes out. There's some fundamental things that those good schools are doing, and they do them consistently, and they develop and they improve over time. And I think that's one of the lessons that we have to learn from them, is that it's not 1 year, put in a program, and miraculously everything gets better. It's a constant critique of the work that you're doing to improve and just keep that trajectory going, staying the course on the things that we know make a difference for kids. That's what it's going to take. And the really good schools, you see them consistently following a strategy and not going off and doing different things. That's important.
And Tiffany, I would make one observation in your question. You said that there are schools that are, quote, floundering. I don't think we have any schools that are floundering. We've got some challenge schools because of poverty, for a variety of different reasons, that are outside of the control of our teachers in the classroom. That doesn't mean we can't do better. We can address those issues, but if we're the only state in the nation last year that, as you know, you're an AYP that showed progress. So we've got to celebrate our successes more often.
During my time at Nanakuli for this most recent schools feature, the principal and his administrators shared with me that they feel like they're on initiative overload because there's a lot of new things going on, particularly with Race to the Top. So how is the board and the department helping these schools that have a lot of new programs in place so that a level of consistency is established?
Well, first, they are at the cutting edge. They are courageous leaders. And the idea of the zones was that it wasn't just about the school, it was about the whole community had to come around. Elementary, middle, high school, not just the high school, but also the community around them. So there are a lot of things happening. They're all related. There's been some additional support provided to the complex areas to help with the initiatives, data coaches, and other personnel supports. They've been provided more time for professional development. So in the coming year, they'll have 12 more professional development days for teachers. That no other schools, other than the two zones of school innovation,
which we're paying for.
Which we are paying for with a variety of sources. And that preparation and planning and collaboration time is really important for getting them the opportunity to think through how all these initiatives fit together. That was very, very important. So there are some of those things that are happening that are intended to help support them and give them more time to get those pieces put together and done well.
This question comes from Claire in Honolulu, In your opinions, what is the role of the teacher, and how are evaluation measurements going to gauge teacher engagement with their students?
So one of the things that's being piloted and is a student survey. It's called the Tripod Survey. It's research-based. It comes out of Harvard University, and it's shown to have one of the highest correlations between for a teacher on the student achievement side. And it's a series of questions given to a student at the end of the year. And they're not, do you like your teacher? It's not about that. It's a lot of other questions about how they feel about, is the teacher open to my questions? Do I feel like I can turn to them for help? Those kinds of questions. I know we just did the survey in Nanakuli, Waianae, and in Keau Ka'upaho in our 2 zone schools. And one of the 6th graders came up to the principal and said, "Thanks for asking for my opinion. It's the first time anyone cared about what I thought." And I think that was, really kind of compelling. As Don said, they're our customers. They're who we focus on. And for the first time, we have a research-based survey that will really ask them for their opinions on their classrooms.
If I could just chime in, Superintendent. Please understand that those teacher surveys via the student, as the superintendent certainly knows better than I do, are not going to be used for punitive or any other way. They're a feedback tool. Some teachers are fearful and that we're only going to use the Hawaii Standards Assessment Test, and that's the only outcome that we're going to focus on. That is not the case. This is just one example. Student evaluations would be another touch point for us to sit down and have a dialogue with that teacher through the principal or their designee, which may be a master teacher in certain cases in that process. So asking our customers, our students, what their experience is in a classroom is a very important tool. It's used in the universities. Why isn't it used in our public school systems?